The crimson warning lights bathed the bridge of the Void Heart in bloody hues, as Captain Riven Korth watched the Galactic Senate's final transmission. The holographic image of Supreme Chancellor Vexithera's three-eyed visage flickered with bureaucratic satisfaction as she delivered humanity's death sentence. By unanimous vote of the Galactic Senate, species designation Terra 3 is hereby classified as a Class 9 existential threat. Immediate sterilization protocols are authorized. May the Void claim their defiance. The transmission cut to static, leaving only the hum of the ship's illegal quantum drives and the nervous breathing of Korth's crew. Around the bridge, 6 faces stared at screens showing the Senate's war fleet, over 3,000 vessels of 12 different species, all converging on Earth's solar system like metallic vultures. "Captain," whispered Navigator Zephyr Voss, her cybernetic implants glowing amber with stress indicators. "Long-range sensors show the first wave will reach Earth in 72 hours. The defense fleet—" She swallowed hard. "There are maybe 200 human ships. Most are colony transports." Korth's scarred hands gripped the command console. The Void Heart wasn't supposed to exist. A ghost ship built from salvaged alien tech and human ingenuity, crewed by outcasts who'd been deemed incompatible with galactic civilization. They'd spent 15 years raiding Senate supply convoys and liberating restricted technologies, becoming legends in the outer systems. But legends couldn't stop genocide. "Weapons Officer Nexus Vale," Korth called to the towering figure hunched over tactical displays. Vale's skin was a patchwork of scars and biotech implants, the result of surviving a Senate pacification camp. "What's our current armament status?" Vale's mechanical voice rasped through vocal cords rebuilt with stolen quantum resonators. 17 fusion torpedoes, Nova-class disruptors at 60% capacity, and a pause as servos whirred in his throat. "The Prometheus device is armed and ready." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member knew about the Prometheus device, the weapon they'd stolen from the Senate's most classified research station. Even Korth didn't fully understand its capabilities, only that the Senate had been willing to sacrifice an entire star system to keep it from human hands. "Sir," Chief Engineer Lyrics Tane spoke up from her station, her normally steady voice cracking with emotion. "My family's on Mars colony. My daughter just started university there. She's going to study xenobiology. Wanted to help humans and aliens understand each other better." Korth closed his eyes. They all had people in the Sol system. The Senate's message had been clear. Every human world, every station, every ship, complete extinction. "Captain Korth," came another voice. Communications specialist Onyx Wraith, her fingers dancing over frequency modulators. "I'm picking up scattered transmissions from human settlements across the galaxy. The Senate's local enforcers are already moving. Brisbane Station went dark 20 minutes ago. New Geneva Colony is under siege." The systematic execution had begun. Korth stood, his weathered face reflecting the red emergency lighting. The Void Heart was one ship against an armada, crewed by 6 humans against a galaxy that wanted them dead. By every tactical analysis, they should run. Disappear into the void between stars and hope the Senate eventually forgot about them. Instead, he smiled, a cold, predatory expression that had haunted Senate nightmares for over a decade. "Helm, set course for the Senate's command flagship. Maximum burn." "Sir?" Pilot Quinn Mercer's hands hovered over the controls. That's suicide. The Sovereign's wrath has more firepower than some planetary defense grids." "No," Korth said, walking to the forward viewport where stars wheeled past in impossible patterns. "That's war, and we're going to show these Xenos what happens when you threaten humanity's children." The Void Heart turned toward destiny, its stolen engines screaming defiance across the cosmos. The Senate command flagship Sovereign's Wrath hung in space like a metallic leviathan, its 3-kilometer hull bristling with weapons that could crack moons. Supreme Admiral Kexnari stood on the bridge, his chitinous form clicking with satisfaction as tactical displays showed the approaching human fleet. "Pathetic," he chittered to his bridge crew. 200 vessels against our armada. The humans will break against us like insects against stone. His tactical officer, a crystalline being whose thoughts manifested as visible light patterns, pulsed uncertainty. Admiral, our intelligence suggests the humans possess unconventional capabilities. Perhaps we should... Should what? Kexanari's mandibles clicked with irritation. Fear a species that hasn't even mastered dimensional fold technology? Their ships are crude chemical rockets compared to our quantum drives. But even as he spoke, proximity alarms began shrieking across the bridge. A single contact had appeared on sensors, small, fast, and impossibly close. How did it get through our perimeter? Kexanari snarled. The answer came in the form of weapons, fire that shouldn't have existed. The Voidheart's Nova-class disruptors, stolen from the Senate's own research labs, tore through the flagship's shields like tissue paper. Explosions cascaded across the massive vessel's hull as systems failed in cascade failures. On the Voidheart's bridge, Nexus Vale worked his weapons console with mechanical precision. Targeting their primary sensor array, now, forward torpedo tubes, fire pattern Omega. The fusion torpedoes struck with devastating accuracy, each one guided by targeting algorithms reverse-engineered from captured Senate technology. The Sovereign's wrath reeled, its mighty engines stuttering as power conduits overloaded. Impossible. Kexanari shrieked as his bridge plunged into emergency lighting. No human ship has that kind of firepower. But Korth wasn't finished. The Voidheart spun through evasive maneuvers that defied physics, its stolen inertial dampeners allowing accelerations that would have liquefied any other crew. Return fire from the Senate ships passed harmlessly through space where the human vessel had been nanoseconds before. Communications, Korth ordered calmly as explosions bloomed around them. Open a channel to all Senate vessels. Full broadcast. Onyx. Wraith's fingers flew over her console. Channel open, Captain. They're listening. Korth's voice carried across the vacuum to every ship in the Armada. Cold, implacable, and utterly human. This is Captain Riven Korth of the Terran vessel Voidheart. You came here to exterminate my species. Instead, you're going to learn why humans don't make good victims. He gestured to Vale, who activated a new weapon system, technology that made even the stolen Senate equipment look primitive. The Prometheus device hummed to life, drawing power from quantum fluctuations in space-time itself. You see, Admiral, Korth continued as energy readings spiked beyond measurement. You made one critical error. You assumed we were the same species. You first encountered a century ago. But humans evolve, we adapt, and we learn from our enemies. The Prometheus device fired. What struck the Senate Armada wasn't merely energy or matter. It was possibility itself, weaponized. Ships didn't just explode. They ceased to have ever been built. Crews didn't die. They simply never existed. Reality rewrote itself around the weapon's discharge, unmaking its targets from the quantum level up. In seconds, 300 Senate vessels vanished from existence. Not destroyed, deleted. Kexanari watched his fleet disappear in waves of impossible energy, his compound eyes reflecting horror beyond description. What are you? We're what you created, Korth replied as the Voidheart positioned itself directly in front of the crippled flagship. Every time you enslaved a human colony, we learned. Every time you pacified our settlements, we grew stronger. Every piece of technology you thought was beyond our comprehension, we stole and improved. More Senate ships materialized from Quantum Fold, reinforcements from other sectors. But they hesitated, their commanders suddenly uncertain, as sensor readings showed the impossible. A single human vessel had just erased a significant portion of their armada. This is just the beginning, Korth transmitted to the arriving fleets. We know where every Senate world is located. We know your weaknesses, your fears, your precious civilians hiding behind energy shields. And we have a message for your Senate. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle across 1,000 alien minds. Call off the extermination order, or we'll show you what extinction really looks like. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as humanity's outcasts prepared to teach the galaxy a lesson in consequences. In the crystalline halls of the Galactic Senate, panic spread like a virus through the assembled representatives. Holographic displays showed the impossible: the sovereign's wrath, pride of the Senate fleet, drifting dead in space while a single human vessel held position nearby like a predator over its kill. Supreme Chancellor Vexithara's three eyes darted between tactical reports and casualty assessments. 300 ships, gone. Not destroyed or damaged, but completely erased from existence as if they had never been built. The weapon signatures were beyond anything in their databases. "How is this possible?" demanded Counselor Yithkara, her gas form rippling with agitation inside its containment suit. "Our intelligence indicated the humans possessed only primitive fusion technology." Senator Velthros of the hegemony world slammed a scaled fist on his podium. "This is clearly some form of dimensional warfare. The humans have somehow accessed technologies from parallel realities." But it was Admiral Zekran, the Senate's chief military strategist, who spoke the words everyone feared. The weapon they deployed, the energy signatures match theoretical models from Project Olympus. Silence fell like a shroud over the assembly. Project Olympus, the Senate's most classified research program, investigating weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. The project had been abandoned after accidentally destroying an entire star system during testing. "You're suggesting," Vexithara said slowly, "that the humans somehow acquired Olympus-class technology." "Not acquired," Zekran corrected grimly. "Perfected. Our projections indicated it would take another 1,000 years to make such weapons. Stable. If the humans have succeeded." His words were interrupted by an incoming transmission that bypassed every security protocol the Senate possessed. The image that materialized was that of Captain Riven Korth, standing on his bridge with the confidence of someone holding an unbeatable hand. "Honored senators," Korth began, his voice carrying a mock politeness that made several counselors flinch. "I trust you've reviewed the tactical reports from your failed extermination fleet. Allow me to clarify your situation." Behind him, the bridge of the Void Heart hummed with activity. Zephyr Voss worked at her navigation console, plotting courses to every major Senate world. Lyrix Tane monitored power flows from weapons that violated several laws of physics. A Nexus Veil stood ready at tactical, his mechanical implants interfacing directly with systems that made the Senate's best weapons look like children's toys. "Your species," Korth continued, "decided that humanity was too dangerous to live." An interesting conclusion, considering we'd been content to remain in our small corner of the galaxy, exploring and trading peacefully. "But you forced our hand." He gestured to a holographic display showing the locations of major Senate worlds. Homeworlds, with billions of citizens, all now within range of weapons they couldn't comprehend. "Let me tell you what we learned during our years as outcasts. Every Senate patrol we raided, every research station we liberated, every classified technology we borrowed, it all led to this moment. You see, humans have a gift for reverse engineering. Give us a piece of advanced technology, and we don't just copy it, we improve it." Counselor Mexthara of the Academic Consortium spoke up, her crystalline voice trembling. "What do you want? Territorial concessions? Trade agreements? Surely we can reach some accommodation." "What we want," Korth interrupted, "is very simple. Immediate cessation of all military action against human worlds, withdrawal of Senate forces from human space, and formal recognition of humanity as a sovereign species with full galactic rights." "Impossible," Senator Velthros snarled. "The Senate does not negotiate with terrorists." Korth's smile was cold enough to freeze starlight. "Terrorists. Senator, we haven't even begun to show you terrorism. Quinn, bring us about. Let's demonstrate our point." The Void Heart turned toward the nearest Senate world, Kepler Tertius, a garden world home to 12 billion hegemony citizens. Long range. Sensors detected the movement immediately, and alarm klaxons began wailing throughout the Senate chamber. "You wouldn't dare!" Vexithara shrieked. A strike against civilian populations would what? Korth's voice cut through the panic like a blade. Make us monsters like you? Every human colony you've pacified was civilian. Every research station you destroyed was filled with scientists and engineers. Our children, our families, our future. The weapon systems of the Void Heart began charging, energy readings climbing toward impossible levels. On Kepler Tertius, defense satellites activated automatically, but their commanders knew the truth. Nothing in their arsenal could stop what was coming. 72 hours, Korth announced as the Prometheus device reached critical charge. That's how long you gave Earth before your extermination fleet arrived. I'm feeling generous. You have 1 hour to call off your attack dogs and issue a formal apology to the human species. The transmission cut, leaving the Senate chamber in chaos as representatives screamed demands and accusations at each other. But beneath the political theater, a cold truth settled into every alien mind present. For the first time in galactic history, humanity held the cards, and they were calling the Senate's bluff. Senator Velthros of the hegemony world stood before his personal communication array, his scaled hands trembling as he established a priority channel to Fleet Command. Behind him, the luxury of his senatorial quarters felt suddenly meaningless. Imported crystal sculptures from a dozen worlds, atmospheric processors maintaining perfect environmental conditions, security systems that could repel assassins and armies alike. None of it mattered when facing weapons that could delete reality itself. Admiral Kixtoan, this is Senator Velthros. He spoke into the comm unit, his voice tight with barely contained panic. I need immediate deployment of our reserve fleets to defend the hegemony homeworlds. The response came back with the mechanical precision of military protocol. Senator, our reserve fleets are already moving to intercept the human vessel. However, preliminary tactical analysis suggests— I don't care about analysis, Velthros snarled. My family is on Kepler Tertius. My children are studying at the Colonial Academy there. Whatever it takes to stop that ship. But even as he spoke, reports were flooding in from across Senate space. The Void Heart wasn't alone anymore. Human vessels, ships that had supposedly been hiding in the outer rim for decades, were emerging from quantum fold points throughout the galaxy. Each one bore the distinctive energy signatures of stolen and improved Senate technology. On the bridge of the Void Heart, communications specialist, Onyx Wraith monitored the chaos erupting across Senate networks. Captain, I'm intercepting emergency broadcasts from 17 different sectors. Looks like our old friends from the Resistance are making their presence known. Korth nodded grimly. The plan had been years in the making. Human outcasts scattered across the galaxy, building ships, gathering intelligence, preparing for the day when the Senate finally decided to end their species. Today was that day. Zephyr, what's our current position relative to Kepler Tertius? Navigator Voss checked her readings. 30 minutes out at current velocity, sir. Senate defense grid is activating, but— She shook her head. They're using BlackHFY plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. Our shields can absorb that level of firepower indefinitely. Chief Engineer Lyrix Tane looked up from her console, her face grim. Captain, I'm reading massive power buildups across the Kepler system. They're preparing to fire everything they have. Let them, Korth replied calmly. Vale, status on the Prometheus device. The scarred weapons officer's mechanical voice carried a note of satisfaction. Fully charged and ready, sir. Target lock acquired on the Planetary Defense Grid Command. Center. One shot will disable their entire orbital defense network without harming civilian populations. It was a careful distinction, one that separated humanity from their enemies. The Senate had voted for complete extermination, every man, woman, and child. But humans, even outlaw humans, still held to certain principles. The Senate, apparently, did not. Captain, Onyx called out urgently. Incoming transmission from Chancellor Vexithara. She's requesting negotiation terms. Korth's scarred face showed no emotion. Put her through. The holographic image of the Supreme Chancellor, materialized on the bridge, her 3 eyes wide with barely controlled terror. Behind her, the Senate chamber was in chaos. Representatives shouting, security forces running tactical assessments, emergency protocols activating across a dozen species' homeworlds. Captain Korth, Vexithera began, her voice carrying none of its earlier authority. Perhaps we acted hastily. The Senate is prepared to discuss alternative solutions to the human question. The human question? Korth's voice carried a dangerous edge. Is that what you call genocide these days? A question to be solved? We were concerned about your species' aggressive tendencies. Stop! The single word cut through her political doublespeak like a blade. You want to know about human aggressive tendencies? We spent a century trying to integrate peacefully into galactic civilization. We offered our scientific discoveries freely. We opened our worlds to alien visitors. We even allowed Senate oversight of our military development. The Void Heart dropped out of quantum fold at the edge of the Kepler system, its arrival detected immediately by every sensor array in the sector. 12 Senate battleships moved to intercept, their weapons charging for what their commanders knew would be a futile engagement. And in return, Korth continued, his image now broadcast simultaneously to the Senate chamber and every major news network in the galaxy, you classified us as an existential threat, not because we attacked anyone, but because we were learning too quickly, because we were becoming too capable, because we refused to stay in the box you built for primitive species. Senator Velthros's voice cracked as he transmitted from his personal quarters. Captain, surely we can reach some accommodation. The hegemony is prepared to offer substantial concessions. The only concession I want, Korth replied as targeting systems locked onto the Senate battleships, is for every member of the Senate to remember this moment. Remember that you chose extinction over coexistence. Remember that you fired the first shot in a war you cannot win. The Prometheus device. Hum to life, its impossible energies bending space-time around the Void Heart's hull. Across the Kepler system, Senate forces detected the power buildup and opened fire in desperation. Thousands of plasma bursts and quantum torpedoes converging on the human vessel. Every shot passed harmlessly through empty space as the Void Heart shifted into dimensional phase, existing in the spaces between reality itself. 30 seconds until weapons range, Zephyr announced calmly. Chancellor Vexithara's image flickered with interference from the massive energy discharges. Please, we can negotiate. The extermination order can be rescinded. Korth looked directly at her, his eyes carrying the weight of every human who had died in Senate pacification campaigns. Too late, he said quietly. The Senate defense grid around Kepler Tertius represented the pinnacle of military engineering. Thousands of automated platforms, each capable of destroying capital ships, all coordinated by quantum AI systems that could process tactical data faster than organic minds could comprehend. It was a fortress that had never been breached, protecting a world that had never known war. In 17 seconds, it would all be scrap metal drifting in the void. Admiral Kixtoen watched from his command ship as the Void Heart approached, its hull shimmering with energies that made his tactical computers scream warnings. His fleet, 12, of the Senate's finest battleships, had been reduced to desperate observers as their weapons proved utterly ineffective against the human vessel's defenses. Admiral, his weapons officer reported, her crystalline form flickering with stress patterns. Our quantum torpedoes are passing through their ship as if it doesn't exist. They've somehow achieved dimensional phase variance. Impossible, Kixtoen growled, though even as he spoke he knew his officers were right. The humans had somehow mastered technology that existed only in theoretical models, the ability to shift between dimensional phases at will, making conventional weapons useless. On the Void Heart's bridge, Chief Engineer Lyrix Tane monitored the exotic matter reactions that powered their phase shift capabilities. Captain, dimensional variance is holding steady at 94%. We can maintain this configuration for another 6 minutes before we need to return to normal space. Minutes would be more than enough. Korth studied the tactical display showing the Senate fleet's futile attempts to damage his ship. Each vessel represented billions of credits in resources, thousands of crew members, and the technological pride of species that had considered themselves humanity's superiors. Now they drifted helplessly, as his single ship prepared to demonstrate the folly of their arrogance. "Nexus," he called to his weapons officer. "Disable their defense grid. Surgical strikes only. I want their weapons offline but minimal casualties." Vale's mechanical fingers danced over his console with inhuman precision. "Aye, Captain. Targeting primary control nodes. Firing." The Prometheus device discharged not as a single devastating blast, but as dozens of precisely calibrated energy pulses. Each one struck a critical component of the defense grid: power relays, command centers, weapons control systems. In seconds, the impregnable fortress that guarded Kepler Tertius went dark, its mighty weapons falling silent. On the planet's surface, 12 billion hegemony citizens looked up at skies suddenly stripped of their protection, many seeing the distant flashes of the disabled platforms. In the capital city of New Hegemona, Senator Velthros stood on his family estate's balcony, watching his species' military might crumble before a single human ship. His personal communicator chimed with an incoming message from his daughter Yixara, a student at the Colonial Academy. Her voice carried the confusion and fear of youth suddenly confronted with mortality. "Father, what's happening? The news feeds are saying a human ship destroyed our defenses. Are we under attack?" Velthros closed his eyes, remembering his speeches in the Senate chamber about human barbarism and the necessity of their extinction. How confidently he had voted for genocide, secure in the knowledge that his own family would never face such a fate. "I don't know, daughter," he whispered into the communicator. "Stay in your dormitory. Stay safe." But safety was no longer something the Senate could guarantee. Captain Korth's voice echoed across every communication channel on Kepler Tertius, reaching billions of alien citizens who had never before questioned their government's actions. "People of the hegemony worlds, you are not our enemies. Your leaders declared war on humanity, but we do not hold you responsible for their choices." The transmission was being simultaneously broadcast to 17 other Senate worlds where human resistance ships had emerged from hiding. The same message, the same restraint, the same terrifying demonstration of power held in check by principle. "However," Korth continued, "your senators voted to exterminate every human man, woman, and child in the galaxy. They branded us an existential threat not because we attacked anyone, but because we learned too quickly for their comfort, because we refused to accept the limitations they placed on our species." In the Senate chamber, Chancellor Vexithara watched her political coalition collapse in real time as representatives from targeted worlds demanded immediate ceasefire orders. The military commanders she had trusted to deliver easy victory were now reporting impossible losses and recommending immediate surrender. "The human fleet has weapons that can rewrite reality itself," Admiral Zekron reported, his voice hollow with defeat. "Our best estimates suggest they could sterilize every Senate world within 48 hours if they chose to do so. But that was the crucial distinction, if they chose. Every tactical analysis confirmed the same terrifying truth. The humans could have opened with planet-killing strikes, could have matched the Senate's genocidal intentions with their own. Instead, they had disabled military targets with surgical precision, demonstrating both overwhelming capability and remarkable restraint. It was a display of power that made their mercy all the more chilling. "Captain Korth," Vexithara transmitted to the Void Heart, her political authority crumbling with each word, "the Senate is prepared to enter into immediate ceasefire negotiations. We may have misjudged the situation." Korth's reply carried the weight of every human who had died under Senate rule. "Chancellor, you didn't misjudge the situation. You created it. Now you're going to live with the consequences." The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as humanity prepared to dictate terms to a galaxy that had sought their destruction. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Senate had been built to inspire awe, soaring crystalline spires that reached toward the stars, holographic displays showing the majesty of 1,000 worlds, architectural grandeur that spoke of civilizations spanning millions of years. Today it felt more like a tomb for galactic arrogance. Chancellor Vexithera stood at the central podium, her three eyes focused on the holographic image of Captain Riven Korth. Behind him, the bridge of the Void Heart hummed with controlled power, every system ready to resume hostilities at a moment's notice. Around the chamber, representatives from 12 species sat in stunned silence as humanity's terms were read into the official record. Complete withdrawal of all Senate military forces from human space within 72 hours, Korth stated, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just demonstrated the ability to destroy worlds. Full recognition of humanity as a sovereign species with all associated galactic rights. Reparations to be paid to the families of every human killed in Senate pacification operations over the past century. Senator Velthros shifted uncomfortably in his seat, remembering his confident predictions about human weakness just hours before. His homeworld of Kepler Tertius remained defenseless, its mighty fleet reduced to scrap metal by weapons that shouldn't exist. The images of his disabled defense grid played endlessly on news feeds across the galaxy, a monument to the folly of underestimating humanity. Furthermore, Korth continued, the Senate will establish a joint commission to investigate all classified research programs involving technologies derived from human scientific discoveries. We know you've been studying our innovations for decades, while publicly dismissing us as primitive. Counselor Mex Thara of the Academic Consortium rose shakily to her feet, her crystalline form resonating with distress frequencies. Captain Korth, surely you understand that such demands would fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power. The Senate has maintained stability for over 10,000 years. Stability built on the suppression of species you considered inferior, Korth interrupted. How many civilizations have you classified as existential threats over those 10,000 years? How many were eliminated before they could develop weapons capable of defending themselves? The question hung in the chamber like an accusation, and the silence that followed spoke volumes. Every representative present knew the answer. Dozens of species had been pacified over the millennia, their crime being rapid technological development or refusal to accept Senate limitations on their growth. Humanity had simply been the first to survive the process. Chief Engineer Lyrix Tane worked quietly at her station, monitoring power flows from the exotic matter reactors that powered their impossible weapons. Her daughter on Mars colony had sent a message an hour ago. The Senate fleets had withdrawn from human space with such haste that they'd abandoned supply depots and support vessels in their retreat. Captain, Navigator Zephyr Voss reported, I'm tracking Senate fleet movements across 17 sectors. They're pulling back to defensive positions around their core worlds. It was a complete strategic withdrawal, the first time in recorded galactic history that the Senate had retreated from a military engagement. But it wasn't fear of human retaliation that drove their retreat. It was the growing realization that their entire civilization had been built on a foundation of lies. News feeds across the galaxy were broadcasting intercepted Senate communications, classified documents released by human resistance cells, evidence of systematic suppression of technological development among inferior species. Populations that had trusted their governments for millennia were learning that their leaders had been complicit in genocide disguised as peacekeeping. The truth is, Korth addressed not just the Senate, but the billions of beings watching across the galaxy. We never wanted to be your enemies. Humans are explorers, scientists, builders. We came to the stars hoping to find friends, allies, partners in discovery. Instead, we found overlords who demanded we remain children forever. Admiral Zikaron's tactical report appeared on the chamber's main display, a comprehensive analysis of human military capabilities that made several representatives physically recoil in their seats. The humans had developed weapons that could manipulate fundamental forces, ships that could phase between dimensions, technologies that made the Senate's proudest achievements look like stone tools. All of this, Korth gestured to the impossible, Readings. We developed in secret while you thought you were containing us. Every time you destroyed one of our research stations, we simply built 3 more in deeper space. Every time you pacified a human colony, the survivors joined our resistance and brought their knowledge with them. The scope of human development was staggering. While the Senate had been congratulating itself on keeping humanity locked in, their designated space human outpost ships had been establishing hidden colonies in star systems the Senate didn't even know existed. Research stations powered by exotic matter had been conducting experiments that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. We could have revealed ourselves years ago, Korth continued. We could have demanded recognition when we first achieved dimensional manipulation. But we chose to remain hidden, hoping you would eventually abandon your genocidal policies through wisdom rather than fear. Chancellor Vexithara's voice cracked as she responded. Captain, if humanity possesses such advanced technology, surely you understand our concerns about your species' potential threat to galactic stability. No. The single word cut through, her excuse like a blade. You were never concerned about our threat to stability. You were terrified of our threat to your supremacy. The moment we started asking inconvenient questions about Senate policies, about the fate of pacified species, about the technologies you claimed were beyond our understanding, that's when you decided we had to die. Behind Korth, weapons officer, Nexus Vale remained motionless at his station, his scarred form a reminder of what Senate pacification really meant. His mechanical voice carried clearly across the chamber. Captain, I'm detecting massive power buildups at several Senate military installations. It appears they're attempting to reactivate planet-killer weapons. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives realized their militaries were preparing for a last-ditch attempt to destroy humanity through sheer overwhelming firepower. But Korth's expression remained calm, almost amused. Let them try, he said quietly. We've been preparing for this day our entire lives. The planet-killer weapon Worldbreaker had been the Senate's ultimate guarantee of supremacy for 3,000 years. A massive orbital platform capable of cracking continental plates and boiling away atmospheres. Hidden in the Vexnari system, it represented the final argument in any diplomatic negotiation. Submit to Senate authority or face extinction. Today, it would become humanity's final lesson to the galaxy. Admiral Zekron stood in the Worldbreaker's command center, his carapaced form hunched over tactical displays showing impossible readings. The weapon required 17 hours to achieve full charge, drawing power from the system's star itself through massive solar collectors. But the humans had known about it for years. Sir, his weapons officer reported, unknown vessels are emerging from quantum fold throughout the system. Energy signatures match the human resistance fleet. Not one ship this time, dozens. Human vessels that had spent decades hidden in the void between stars, crewed by refugees from pacified colonies, armed with weapons that made the Senate's best technology look primitive. They materialized from dimensional phase shifts like ghosts becoming solid, surrounding the Worldbreaker in a formation that spoke of careful planning and absolute confidence. The lead vessel identified itself with the call sign Prometheus Unbound, its captain a woman whose scarred face bore the marks of Senate interrogation. Admiral Zekron, this is Captain Vera Nightfall of the Free Human Fleet. By the authority vested in me by the survivors of New Geneva Colony, you are ordered to stand down your weapon and surrender your platform. Zekron's mandibles clicked with desperate fury. You dare make demands of the Senate's ultimate weapon? The Worldbreaker can sterilize entire systems. Yes, came the calm reply. It could, if it still existed. The Worldbreaker's massive structure, 3 kilometers of armor and weapons systems, simply vanished. Not destroyed by explosions or torn apart by weapons fire, but deleted from reality as if it had never been built. Where moments before the galaxy's most feared weapon had hung in space, only empty void remained. In the Senate chamber, the holographic displays went dark as the Worldbreaker's signal cut out. Chancellor Vexithara stared at the blank screens, in numb horror, finally understanding that humanity's weapons weren't just advanced, They were impossible by every known law of physics. "How?" she whispered into her communicator. Captain Korth's image remained steady on the main display, his expression carrying the weight of species survival and the burden of necessary choices. "The same way we've done everything else, Chancellor. We learned from our mistakes." The truth was more complex than simple revenge. Humanity's greatest discovery hadn't been dimensional manipulation or exotic matter reactors. It had been the realization that reality itself was far more malleable than any species had imagined. The Senate's own classified research had provided the foundation, but it was human ingenuity that had turned theoretical possibility into devastating reality. "Every time you destroyed one of our worlds," Korth continued, his voice carrying across the galaxy through captured communication networks, "we studied the weapons you used. Every time you pacified our settlements, we reverse-engineered your technology. Every time you told us something was impossible, we made it work." Senator Velthros's private communicator chimed with urgent messages from his family on Kepler Tertius. His daughter's voice was calm now, no longer frightened but filled with wonder. "Father, there are human ships in orbit. They're helping repair our defense grid. They say they want to show us something called cooperative security." It was happening across the galaxy. Human vessels that had emerged from hiding weren't conquering Senate worlds. They were offering assistance, sharing technology, demonstrating through actions what their species had always claimed to desire: partnership rather than domination. "This is what we could have been," Korth announced to the Assembly. "This is what we tried to be for over a century. We offered you our sciences, our discoveries, our friendship. You responded with fear and violence because you couldn't conceive of a species that grew stronger through cooperation rather than conquest." On Kepler Tertius, human engineers worked alongside hegemony technicians to rebuild defense systems with hybrid technology. Senate designs enhanced with human innovations, creating protective networks more effective than either species could build alone. Similar scenes played out on 17 worlds, as humanity demonstrated what they called defensive cooperation. The Senate's military commanders watched in growing amazement as human fleets positioned themselves not as occupying forces but as partners in system defense. The same species that had just demonstrated the ability to delete entire fleets from existence was now offering to help protect former enemies from external threats. "Captain Korth," Counselor Mexithara spoke, her crystalline form resonating with frequencies that indicated deep contemplation. "If your species possesses such advanced capabilities, why maintain the pretense of negotiation? You could simply dictate terms to the entire galaxy." "Because," Korth replied, "that would make us exactly what you always claimed we were, conquerors and tyrants. We don't want to rule the galaxy, Counselor. We want to explore it alongside equals." Chief Engineer Lyrix Tane looked up from her console, tears streaming down her face as she read messages from Mars Colony. Her daughter's university had just announced a joint program with human institutions, xenobiology studies enhanced with technologies that would allow unprecedented understanding between species. "Captain," she said softly, "I'm receiving reports from human colonies throughout the galaxy. The Senate withdrawal has created power vacuums in several systems. Local governments are requesting assistance with transitional security. It was the test of humanity's true intentions. Would they fill the void left by Senate retreat with their own authority, or would they honor their stated principles of cooperation and partnership? The answer came in the form of human ships moving not to occupy abandoned Senate installations, but to help local governments establish independent defense networks. Technology freely shared, knowledge openly exchanged, power deliberately distributed, rather than concentrated. This is our proposal," Korth addressed the Senate one final time. "The age of galactic dominance by a single authority is over. In its place, we offer a new compact: voluntary association, mutual defense, shared knowledge, and equal representation for all sentient species." The holographic displays around the chamber came alive with technical specifications, treaty frameworks, and cooperative agreements that human diplomatists had been developing for decades. Not the harsh terms of a conqueror, but the careful architecture of a truly representative galactic community. Chancellor Vexithara stared at the proposals, finally understanding the magnitude of humanity's long-term planning. They hadn't just prepared for war, they had prepared for peace. Every detail had been considered, every potential objection addressed, every species' unique needs incorporated into a framework that offered genuine equality. The Senate as it exists today will be dissolved, Korth continued, but not destroyed. Your species' knowledge, your perspectives, your contributions to galactic civilization, all of these have value. We're not seeking to replace you. We're asking you to join us as partners in something better. The chamber fell silent as representatives processed the implications. Humanity was offering to share the very technologies that had just defeated the galaxy's most powerful military forces. The species that had been classified as an existential threat was proposing to make itself vulnerable by eliminating the knowledge monopolies that enabled dominance. Senator Vel Thros stood slowly, his scaled form trembling with the weight of decision. Captain Korth, if the hegemony worlds were to accept these terms, if we were to join this proposed galactic compact, what assurance do we have that humanity won't eventually use its technological advantages to assert dominance? Korth's answer came not in words but in actions. The Void Heart's weapon systems powered down completely, its exotic matter reactors shifting to minimal output, its dimensional phase generators cycling to standby. Across the galaxy, human resistance ships followed suit, not retreating but demonstrating trust through voluntary vulnerability. The same assurance we're asking from you, Korth replied. Good faith, mutual respect, and the understanding that true security comes not from the ability to destroy your neighbors, but from their willingness to help you thrive. For the first time in galactic history, the chamber erupted not in argument or accusation, but in something approaching hope. Species that had been enemies for millennia began discussing cooperation. Technologies that had been hoarded for centuries were offered for mutual benefit. And in the center of it all, humanity extended hands that had once been forced into fists. The vote is called, Chancellor Vexithara announced, her voice carrying a note of wonder she hadn't felt in centuries, all in favor of dissolving the current Senate structure and establishing the proposed galactic compact of equal worlds. The results were unanimous, not because of fear, but because for the first time, every species saw a future where they could grow beyond the limitations others had placed upon them. As the vote was recorded and the new age began, Captain Riven, Korth looked out at the stars through the Void Heart's forward viewport. His crew, outcasts and refugees who had spent their lives fighting for the right to exist, were finally going home to a galaxy that would welcome them as equals rather than fear them as threats. Set course for Earth, he ordered quietly. It's time to tell our people that the war is over. We won. But the greatest victory wasn't the defeat of the Senate's forces or the demonstration of humanity's technological superiority. It was the knowledge that the galaxy's children would grow up in a universe where their potential would be nurtured rather than feared, where cooperation would replace domination, and where the words existential threat would be remembered only as a reminder of humanity's greatest triumph, the moment they chose to be saviors instead of conquerors. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter as the galaxy prepared to discover what wonders awaited when species chose to build together rather than tear each other down. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon hadn't been the Prometheus device or dimensional manipulation technology. It had been the radical idea that strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to trust. And that lesson would echo through the cosmos for 1,000 generations to come.